Hi, I'm Dean Martin, CEO of InPayTech. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. I thought it was important for investors that weren't able to join our October general meeting to share an overview of our progress to date on ClickVu. I wanted to highlight the strategic importance of the Tipsco acquisition, what we've done to transform Tipsco into ClickVu, and the power of our payment patent to bring together payroll, superannuation, payments, and other financial services in the digital age in a way that enhances value and quality for each participant in the ecosystem. I'll explain that further throughout the deck. Ultimately, ClickVu is the 10-year culmination of a partnership with Australian payroll, Australian employers, and Australian employees. ClickVu not only increases the quality of payment data and payments, it increases the value of payments and payment data for each participant: employers, employees, superannuation, suppliers, each person that's involved in that in various payment processes. What have we done to date? The approval of the Tipsco acquisition during our GM has really meant that we can move our go-to-market strategy into top gear. With our proof of concept, we're very fortunate to have participants who are both veterans of the Australian payroll industry, together with an aggregator who's a new ClickSuper customer. Together they bring a depth of insight and a breadth of market coverage to really make sure that our proof of concept is something that adds value right across the ecosystem from day one. And I'm happy to report that our collaboration partners' commercial arrangements are progressing as planned. Now, bear with me, this is the most technical slide that we'll get into during this presentation, but I thought it was important to really get this out of the way early. Well, what have we done? Okay, so moving Tipsco from a vertically scalable platform to a horizontally scalable platform is really about providing highly responsive, scalable infrastructure at low cost. When you think, as you scale vertically with infrastructure at the higher end, as you make machines bigger and more powerful, gets relatively expensive relatively quickly. You solve that when you scale horizontally. A NoSQL platform facilitates a flexible approach to data modeling to easily accommodate a specific use case today, but as that evolves and changes, it's easy to change it with NoSQL. And updating from a RESTful to GraphQL APIs is really about reducing development and network traffic when you're changing data requirements and applications. I know for most of you that would be fairly technical, but for those close to us, to ClickSuper, I know that that's been well received, and I wanted to highlight that early in the piece. So those of you who have been invested with us for a while probably appreciate that InPayTech's core competencies are really around delivering compliance and payment solutions. We were, if you like, an early reg tech or compliant. We thought of ourselves as compliance tech. That's sort of now morphed into this idea of a reg tech. But our partnership with payroll, ATO and government, superannuation over the past decade has really enabled us to look at the market differently. Now, what you see here on the presentation deck is just a couple of examples of some benefits that we bring. So when you think about it, when an employee onboards onto an employer, it's really a fairly mundane experience for most employees. They try and get it done as quickly as possible. The same can be said on the employer side. What ClickVu does a high level of point of entry validation to make sure that data is correct, stop rework, and really that forms the foundation for this concept of a digital wallet or a digital passport. And that's what opens up this whole world of benefits. So once you get the data right the first time, you onboard once, and then because of consumer data rights, you can use that data in a way that's meaningful and beneficial to the employee, or rather they can choose who they want to share that with. So for example, I onboard to a new employer, but that same data also enables me to access a low doc loan, other specific special offers in my region. You know, when you're on board with payroll, there's obviously your address details, and you as the individual can really nominate how you want that data shared and what sort of benefits you're interested in. Some of the other things to really think about in this space, and really looking back to our core competencies around payments and compliance, is that the way that we integrate with payroll, superannuation, government, and banking is all via APIs. So data is always kept, if you like, in the plumbing. It's always secure. We're never unnecessarily exposing data onto a desktop where you lose the benefit of business management systems, access control, password protection and audit log, i.e. When something's on a desktop, it can be changed and you don't know who's made that change. And of course, I'm talking about things like BSB account numbers, you know, financial data, important data. You want it secured and you want to know when it's changed. Now, a picture tells 1,000 words, and really that's what we're trying to do with this slide here. What you see is that what we're trying to show you is what we see. We see payments as an ecosystem. All employed Australians get paid by their employer. They will typically, their employer also pays their superannuation. But us as employees, as working Australians, we access other services. What we're doing with ClickVu is really looking at how to effectively and frictionlessly bring those services to you in a way that is valuable for each participant in the ecosystem. The next few slides will unpack that further and really try to bring that to life for you. So if we start with employers, you know, when somebody's onboarding, as I said, as somebody that's onboarded multiple times, I'll just try and get that done as quickly and as painlessly as possible. That's often reflected at the other end. What we do is validate that data at the point of entry and digitize it. So that data is captured once, turn it into digital wallet, turn it into digital passport, use it across the ecosystem with other service providers when I choose to. That really adding value concept overlaid with that, you know, validation for the quality concept, and really automating compliance. So depending on what industry you're working in, there's different levels of compliance, whether it's working with children, responsible service of alcohol, of course, and hospitality, you know, the teaching, the working with children piece. In the role I do, there's financial checks, police checks, qualification checks that are required for the fulfillment of my role. Having that validated at point of entry and periodically checked in my working life makes it easy for my employer to remain compliant for the requirements that we have. And that's all I'll say about employers, but I think that should give you enough to understand what ClickVu does for the employer experience. Now, when you have a look at payroll, well, what does it mean for them? I mean, payroll's a really competitive market in Australia. We're very proud of, in this region of the world, to really be exporting some of that insight and that capability overseas. So we are on the bleeding edge. But what you're also starting to see now is that payrolls understand that to be relevant, they also need to expand their services. Look, if you speak to most payrolls, and I have the benefit of being close to that industry and speak to payrolls weekly, and really what they're telling me is they want to really focus on their core, do that effectively, which ClickVu enables, but ClickVu also enables them to collaborate and partner with other service providers like superannuation, like low doc loan providers, like insurance providers, in a way that's frictionless for the employee. The employee decides what they're interested in seeing. They repurpose the data that they've pushed into payroll, and payroll get a loyal, sticky customer and ideally an employer that's an advocate. The employee gets access, gets value from their high quality data and uses that in a way that's beneficial for them. And I might just stop there for payroll and move on to a couple of the others that we see in the ecosystem. Superannuation. Now, you know, again, Australia and I myself am very proud of the superannuation industry. It's really meant that we've accumulated a lot of wealth as a nation. And again, this is a market that's consolidating and highly competitive. So with ClickVu, we're really looking at delivering value to the superannuation, again, at that critical onboarding step. What most of us would experience as employees is when we've changed employers, we've often changed funds. Now that's actually been brought up into, raised in the most recent federal budget, and it's this concept of fund stapling. That's an important concept and something that ClickVu is fully on board with. We actually can enable that concept of fund stapling now. And what that's really about, it's about not proliferating multiple superannuation accounts for the same employee at different funds and really eroding that employed Australians' retirement nest egg with unnecessary fees across multiple funds and across multiple administrators. So that if you want effortless fund stapling, that's something that we can live with ClickVu right away. Of course, staying engaged with members is something that you see funds spend tens of millions of dollars on, and rightly so. The best way to have a robust and healthy superannuation system is to have us as working Australians engaged and focus on how our money is being invested for us. What we do in ClickVu is really create that opportunity for funds to engage in a meaningful way, in a frictionless channel, with periodic payments. Each fortnight, month or quarter, your employer is making a payment on your behalf to your fund. That, via the ClickVu platform, really creates that two-way engagement opportunity to check in and see if I have the appropriate insurance for the role that I'm doing now, that I'm paying the appropriate amount. Do I need to, at this point in my career, be adding more into my superannuation? How does that change? Making sure when I change employers that the fund has that opportunity to stay in contact in that, that real moment of truth. And I'll stop there for superannuation. I think that gives you a bit of insight of the power of the ClickVu platform. When you think of other benefit providers, look, insurance sort of comes up a lot. Low doc loans, with the data that's in payroll, in superannuation, there's a lot of deep insight about you from a demographic and career point of view, and that can really be brought together with your personal preferences as an employee and other aggregated financial data. You overlay that with what we have in payroll, and for those that understand data, you can see how that digital passport, that digital wallet, those financial aggregated information and personal preferences really come together in a meaningful way for other suppliers. So in summary, I just wanted to really highlight or reinforce the key things that ClickVu is about. Ultimately, it's about increasing the quality and the value of employee and member data for the member. We facilitate regular and ongoing engagement aligned to periodic payments, and we do it in other ways, but obviously if you're getting paid fortnightly, monthly, weekly, it is a real opportunity to reach out to a member or to an employee in a way that's meaningful for them. Obviously, we talk about robots and AI, and that really, what that does is enable us to provide a scalable yet specific advice. So the scalability comes from having a lot of the heavy lifting done by robots and AI, and the specific nature of the data we have, and with consumer data rights, if employees choose to share that data with other service providers, that means they can have not just a broad market offering, but something specific to their career stage, their life stage, their income, their geographic location, all of those sort of things that can make an offer more meaningful to an individual. Of course, when you think about our platform and like other low dev platforms, it's really about facilitating collaboration and making it easy for other participants to add value to the payroll process, add value to the employee's digital and financial well-being. Finally, and I can't emphasize it enough, and for lack of a better term, unfortunately, cybercrime and identity theft identity theft's the most common one of the most common forms of crime in Australia, and cybercrime itself as an industry is growing at a rate of knots, and I have to use the word industry because it engages so many resources and so many people across the globe that there's no other adequate way to describe it. Now, I think I've given those of you that don't know us well enough through the deck, but look, some questions came up and some questions that I constantly get asked. I just want to drill down on those a little bit, and I've sort of brought those up for you there to read at your leisure. So we often get asked, how is the InPayTech IP1 transactional patent different? There's really 3 or 4 key things that make it different. One, we can virtually attach, we enable virtually limitless data to be attached to electronic payment. What does that mean? Well, if you're a consumer using consumer banking, you've got 18 characters to describe the payment. Now, that's sufficient if you're transferring some money to your brother, happy birthday, that's enough. There's enough characters to do that. But when you start to think about payments in a industrial or in a business context, 18 characters simply isn't enough to really make that payment or that payment information meaningful to the receiver of the payment. So virtually limitless data can be transferred with our patent. The other part of it is, of course, we can transfer the electronic payment and the electronic data in the same stream. What I mean by that is, ultimately, when you receive a payment, a ClickSuper or a ClickVu or an InPayTech payment, you also have in that same stream through your banking interface, whether you consume that data electronically through your banking interface or visually through a banking portal, you've got the data, limitless data there with our patented process. All you need to do is authenticate yourself, and you can get all the data associated with that payment. And of course, because you're authenticating yourself in that same payment stream or in that same vehicle that's transported the money, you as the supplier can control what level of data each participant, each stakeholder in that payment receives. For instance, a regulator or government might need to see the full payment information. The sort of data that you store in your own systems might be more complete, and the receiver of the data might just receive a summarized version of that, or however that may play out. The point is that it's easily controlled in the InPayTech process. And probably the last thing to think about, look, we can host the payment data for you and transport that, or facilitate its transport with the payment, if you like. Increasingly, what we're seeing is that our business partners want to hold that payment information, that remittance advice, that payment data in their own systems. That really gives them complete control over the data security and the data processing in a way that's in accordance with their business requirements. Another question that comes up quite often: are other businesses likely to be wanting to use InPayTech's patented transaction method? Look, absolutely. It's without saying too much. We're in discussions with both white labelling and licensing our patented process for business-to-business applications, for business-to-consumer applications, and for business-to-government. The business-to-government's part of the course for us. We started in that compliance space, and that's something that we have good depth and experience in. But across each of those types of payments, B2C, B2B, and B2G, we're in discussions with other payments organisations or others that need to move significant data and do it securely. I'll better talk to you more about those in coming months. How is IP1's methods different from the new payments platform, NPP, new payments platform? Well, we're different in a number of key areas. At the moment, NPP is really a consumer-based product. Its limitation happens to be 280. Obviously, that's a big step up from the 18 characters that we already have, but 280, again, for most business applications, particularly if there's regulation and a requirement for ATO, AUSTRAC, other regulators to have good permanently linked data to each payment. It's simply not enough to deliver the sort of information that's required. It means that businesses can trip themselves up, other financial institutions can trip themselves up with not having all the right data, all in one place, associated, permanently linked with a payment. I've sort of mentioned those other two key things there. And look, you know, you talk about NPP and overlay services. The difference with InPayTech is that, look, it works on existing banking infrastructure and can literally be an overlay service for any existing electronic payment system. So we're not just limited to the Australian market. We're not just limited to Australian banking. We're not limited to or tied to any underlying infrastructure. Because our solution is so elegant and ultimately has an active URL that can be embedded in any payment reference field, and we can attach that limitless data, host it, have the client host it, or let them control and appropriately control access levels for the regulator, for the customer, and of course the supplier controls their own. I think that sort of does enough on that one. How confident are we? Look, by combining our payment process and our special relationships, and really bringing this engagement platform to market with veterans in this space and with aggregators in this space, we have a high degree of confidence on what we'll deliver and what we're delivering in the coming months. I look forward to sharing more details about that as we move into the new financial year, and I look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Thanks for taking the time for this. To watch this presentation. Cheers.